All right, we've got 6:01, so let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Manchester Springs City Council for March the 7th, 2023. And if we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before I ask the city clerk to call the roll, I will mention that Councillor Wilderhoff has an excuse tonight. She is out with a medical issue. And Judy, then if you could go ahead and call the roll.
Council members Judith Chandler. Present. John Shada. Julie Wolf. Here. Natalie Johnson. Here. Michelle Weatherholt, we know, is out. Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune. Present. And Mayor John Graham.
Present. And to be clear, the Council Weatherholt is excused. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so Council, you've had a chance to review the agenda. I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Okay, and then Julie is second. Okay, motion is second. Let's go ahead and vote.
Six to zero in favor.
Okay, great. Okay, moving right along here, we have public comment on non-agenda items. So if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak to an item that is not on the agenda, this would be the time to do it. And Judy, have we received any emails or, okay, apparently not. So let's move right along. Next item is our consent calendar. We actually have 4 items on it. First is approval of the February 21st, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Second, approval of a correction in the employee handbook. Third, approval of the general services agreement with Marcus Electric LLC for the installation of an emergency generator at the Public Services Building. And fourth, approval of the purchase order for the Ventrac tractor. Okay, so if anyone wants to remove something, we can do that. Otherwise, I would look for a motion to approve and accept.
Mayor, I would like to remove F1, approval of the February 21st minutes for a minor correction. Otherwise, move to approve the consent calendar items 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, so the motion, second, okay, all right. So the motion then is to approve the consent calendar items 2, 3, and 4, and then we'll take up item F1 immediately following as a separate item. Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
Six to zero in favor.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so now we'll discuss the approval of the February 21st, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Councillor Chandler.
I just have a minor correction. At the beginning of the meeting, it was noted that Councillor Weatherholt was not here. She did arrive later and it was not noted in the minutes when she arrived. But based on the votes, I think we can pretty much conclude that she was here right before we voted on the, so, I see. Oh, never mind. I see that it's corrected at the top. Never mind. It's just not corrected in the body of the minutes. So thank you. Never mind.
Okay, are you satisfied that the minutes reflect? Okay. Any further discussion on this item? Julie?
Does that mean we have to move to approve the minutes still, I think?
Yes, we do.
Also move.
Okay, so we move.
Second.
Okay, and we have second by Councillor Chandler. Okay, all in favor, let's vote.
Six to zero in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Council, we're done with the consent calendar. Moving on to business items, item G1, approval of Crystal Carr as a regular member of the Housing Advisory Board. And Crystal, okay, would you like to come forward? Say hi. We've had an opportunity to know a little bit about you in the council pack with the material you submitted. But if you'd like to sit down and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving on the Housing Advisory Board. You notice the button in front of the microphone. You press that and it should turn green. Okay, you want to be about 3 inches away from the microphone when you speak. So, okay, tell us why you're interested in being on the Housing Advisory Board.
So I am the
the homeless prevention and response.
Could you move the
coordinator.
microphone just a little bit closer? We're recording this for a TV audience.
I am currently the homeless prevention and response coordinator for the city of Colorado Springs. And I do a lot for the city. I've been the executive director of Family Promise that provided shelter for families with children experiencing homelessness. And I decided that I would like to have a positive impact in my city and in my town. And so I wanted to use my gifts with an understanding about housing issues and homelessness issues and provide those to the city of Manitou Springs.
Great, thank you very much. Council, if you have any questions or comments for Crystal, this is a good time. Nancy?
Yeah, Crystal attended the last HAB meeting via Zoom, and they are very excited about her being appointed as a very qualified member of the Housing Advisory Board.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay, so yes, you have our appreciation for volunteering to step up or stepping up and volunteering. If there's no further questions, council, I would ask for a motion to approve. Nancy?
Sure. I move to approve Crystal Carr as a regular member of the Housing Advisory Board.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote.
Six to zero in favor.
Great. Thank you. Crystal, thank you very much for coming
Thank
down and
you.
for volunteering. Super. Okay, next item. Is first reading of ordinance number 0223, an ordinance repealing and reenacting chapter 15.04 Building Code of the Manitou Springs Municipal Code to adopt by reference the 2023 edition of the Pikes Peak Regional Building Code. And this was an item we heard about last week during the work session. So I would ask our city planning director to come forward. Anna, and if you would like to make any comments or introduce speakers.
All right, temporary technical malfunction. For the record, Hannah Van Nimwagen McGuire with the Planning Department. I wanted to just quickly introduce our speakers tonight. They are prepared to answer a few questions that came up at the work session meeting, as well as they have a presentation if so desired by the City Council. But otherwise, I'll turn it over to Roger Lovell.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Anna. Roger, Gina, welcome. Okay, so I think one of the questions we had last week was there was a little discussion of historic, meaning the word historic or historic preservation.
Yes, thank you. Roger Lovell. Gina Kolchiska here is prepared to address that.
Good evening, Gina Kolchiska, attorney for Pikes Peak Regional Building Department. One of the questions that came from the work session was very specific to the definition of historic structure. That question was posed by Council Member Wolf. We are prepared to answer. What we have done since last week is go back and review the LUDC and also review Title 15 and Title 17 of your city code, also referred to as municipal code. Your Title 15 contains the definition of historic structure, which is the definition that we adopt in the ordinance proposed before you, and also the appendix that will be incorporated into the Pikes Peak Regional Building Code once we have a complete adoption of that ordinance. Title 17 focuses on historic preservation regulations. It does not contain a definition of historic structure. So your definition of historic structure goes back to Title 15. And I represent to you that what we have included in the ordinance is a verbatim definition of the term as defined in your city code or municipal code, very specific to Title 15.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Super. Any other questions or comments from council? I think we had a pretty good discussion last week. It was pretty lucid, I thought. Well, if there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'm willing to approve on first reading ordinance 0223 and ordinance repealing and reenacting chapter 15.04, building code of the Manitou Springs Municipal Code to adopt by reference the 2023 edition of the Pikes Peak Regional Building Code.
Okay, do we have a second? Second by Counselor Wolf. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Six to zero in favor.
Great, thank you. So passes on first reading. We will have second reading, which includes a public hearing 2 weeks from tonight on March 21st. Thank you very much. We'll give you a few minutes if you would like to. I mean, you're certainly welcome to stay for the exciting conclusion of tonight's meeting, but I think this was probably the highlight. So,
Sincerely, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
okay, cheers.
Thank you very much. And we do not mean to be disrespectful, but we're going to head up to Green Mountain Falls on a very similar code presentation. So
Okay,
Thank you for having
all
us.
right, thank you. Okay, our next item is first reading of ordinance number 0123, an ordinance repealing and reenacting section 13.04.020 of the Manitou Springs Code of Ordinances concerning connection required, section 13.08.050 connection charge, and section 13.20.010 charges established. And we'll start off by hearing from our finance director, Becca Davis. Becca?
Good evening. So this ordinance is to help ensure that we don't have confusions in the future on a couple of different items within the water sewer code. And the first is to ensure that the water sewer tap fees are never waived. And we're going to do this by including language stating they're not going to be waived in code sections 13.08.050 and section 13.20.010. And then the other item that we're addressing here is what appeared to be two conflicting areas of code concerning the septic systems. And to ensure that we have no new septic systems or other existing individual sewage disposal systems within the city limits. And what we're doing is addressing the code section 13.04.020, which has a sentence referencing waiving a connection requirement to the city's sewer system under unusual circumstances. And we've added an extra sentence to this section stating that this references only existing septic systems, not new systems. And we point towards the code section 13.06.010, which states new septic tanks or other individual sewage disposal systems are prohibited.
Great, thank you. Julie?
I'm struggling with the first sentence of the the second to last paragraph, 13.04.020. The first sentence says the owner of any house, blah, 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 situated within the city, blah, 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 is required at such owner's expense to install. Oh, I guess it is okay. At first, when it said, or may in the future be located, I thought that was a conflict with what's yellowed, but it's not. So I withdraw my concern.
Okay, thank you. Other counselors, questions, comments? Mr. Parker, I think if you would like to address any point here, that would be
Well,
fine.
I mean, really briefly, we actually went back and got a copy of the ordinance that adopted this section 1304-020 and 1306-010. They were both adopted or amended by the same ordinance back in like 1999, I believe. And it stated in the whereas clause of the ordinance that the intent of these two provisions was to prohibit new septic systems altogether, but then to require connection of existing septic systems when a sewer line comes within 400 feet, unless there are unusual circumstances. So when it was drafted in the first place, it was intended to be clear that there's no new septic systems in the city. But to be frank, I read them probably the wrong way the first time I was asked to look at them. And then the second time I read it, I think I read it the right way. So I think adding this language in here helps clarify that, at least for now, and at least in compliance with the intent of the original ordinance, that there will be no new septic systems permitted in the city at all. There's no waiver at all. And then for existing septic systems, if a sewer line comes within 400 feet, the city can require owners to connect unless unusual topographic circumstances or something else makes it, infeasible. So.
Great, thank you. That's helpful. And I take some comfort in hearing that even lawyers are sometimes challenged by verbal or legal
I
documents.
just try to sound confident when I'm talking. I'm not confident half the time. So it was not clear, and but the ordinance itself made it clear.
Okay.
So
Great. Well, I think that makes me feel more comfortable about it. So great. Council, other comments, questions? If not, I guess we could go to a motion. Natalie?
I move to approve ordinance number 0123, an ordinance repealing and reenacting section 13.04.020 of the Manitou Springs Code of Ordinances concerning connection required, section 13.08.050, connection charge, and section 13.20.010, charges established on the first reading, and set a public hearing for March 21st, 2023 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard.
Thank you. And we have a second from Councillor Wolf. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote.
Six to zero in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. That's, we appreciate the work that you done there. Also, thank you, Mr. Parker. Great. Okay, moving right. Don't sit down, John. Sorry. Your timing is impeccable. This is what we'd hope for in a fire professional. So the next item is intergovernmental agreement for automatic aid for fire protection and emergency services between Crystal Park Metropolitan District and the city of Manitou Springs. And we are joined by our Manitou Springs Fire Chief, John Forsett. If you could introduce your companion.
I will. I invited Fire Chief Leander from Crystal Park.
Thank you. You have the floor.
So before you, I don't know that I'd say too much more than what you found in the memorandum. As you know, the emergency services just doesn't function without cooperation amongst other agencies. We can't do this in a silo by any way, shape or form. So this is a renewal of an IGA that you folks, some of you folks maybe not, worked on back in 2015. It's an update of that IGA. It's already been through the Metropolitan District for approval up in Crystal Park, and now I bring it forward to you for approval. And questions?
Council, do we have questions? Apparently not, Chief.
Okay.
Perhaps it would be neighborly if we would give Chief Leander an opportunity if he'd like to make a remark. You don't have to. But since you're here,
No, we enjoy and I'm very happy to have a great working relationship with Manitou Springs, and I'd like to just keep that moving forward.
Okay, all righty. Council, once again, any further questions or comments? If not, we could entertain a motion. Julie?
Move to approve the intergovernment agreement being extended. Another 5 years, I guess it says. Is that right?
It's 5 years, but after the 5 years, it automatically
Right.
renewals every year.
I move to approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Six to zero in favor.
Okay, great. Well, this is, we appreciate the work that you gentlemen have done and the work that your firefighters do. Neighbors helping neighbors. I think that's what this is about, right?
That's exactly it.
Good. And I know,
Go ahead.
I'd also like to thank you. This week, we all got a copy of the fire department's annual report. So it looks like you had a busy but productive year last year. So well done.
Thank you.
Pass our
Thank you.
appreciation on to your
I'll do
folks.
that. For sure. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Council, I think we may be able to have a record meeting tonight. Okay, so we are at, thanks, gentlemen. We're at receive or act on council correspondence, so to open it up. Anybody have anything? Julie?
Just have a couple things. One thing I wanted to know is, can we have the list of the people who are signed up for the Citizens Academy? Maybe email to us or something.
Okay, I haven't seen any, but I'm sure we have a list. Yeah, Denise, if you could respond to that, please.
Yeah, we aren't sharing it yet because we're getting confirmation from everybody. So we've got 6 that we're still waiting to ensure confirmation. And then if not, then we go to our wait list. Soon as we have confirmation, then we'll make it public for everyone and put it on our website, et cetera. So yes, we'll definitely get it to you at that time.
Thank you.
Okay. Great.
Thanks. My other issue is, I'd like to know, I'd like to be able to see all the SRSA requests that come in to the city, because I want to know what people are asking about, whether it's, you know, the news stations or local media, newspaper or whatever, or individuals.
Julie, you said Sursa. Did you mean Cora?
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Thank goodness for you. Yeah, Cora. Cora requests the public, you know, the information. And so I wanted to know if, I guess it's a question for Jeff. Am I entitled to see that?
I mean, core requests are public documents. I think the real issue is just how does city council want to address getting it to city council members? I think it takes a little bit of work for city staff to put this together, but it's more of an internal city policy. I think Councilmember Whiff, you had asked me in an email about, is there some issue with a core request relating to like a quasi judicial matter? Maybe coming to the city. I think that was one.
Oh, yeah, because Denise said something about, her email said something like, oh, there was a core request made. I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it said there was a core request made, but then it was withdrawn. So we're not going to show it to you. And then something about quasi judicial. And I was like, oh, I need Jeff to clarify that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what I said is there was a court request withdrawn or made, and then it was withdrawn, and then there was another one on a property. And my question, it didn't have to do with either one of those. What if there's a core request that's going to be a quasi judicial? So there's a development coming down and somebody says, I want all the emails between planning and this land development. And then it becomes a quasi judicial. And that's why I said that's something to consider. I don't know. That's a legal opinion, because then you as quasi judicial, you'll have information prior to it being presented to you and have additional information. So I honestly don't know. I would just ask that from our legal side.
Yeah, so I think there's sort of 2 issues we're dealing with here. First of all, I mean, core requests are public documents. The requests themselves are a public document. So anybody from the public could get a core request. And then what's provided in response to a core request is usually a public document. Some core requests can be made by like a person in interest, and then they would be the only ones who'd be entitled to get that information. So I think that in general, city council, for most core requests, can get copies of the requests. They can get copies of the answers. And there may be some where it would be something that you wouldn't be entitled to. But in most cases you would. So I think the first issue is, how does the city council want to handle getting those to city council members as an internal process?
We already have a nice system in place. Ever since we had this last discussion and you suggested, yes, it's public and yes, we should be able to see it, then Judy has always sent us an email and it'll have attachments. And one attachment is the request itself, and then the other attachment is the response. But this time, the weekly report said there was a core request, and I was like, oh, I want to see it. And Denise was like, no, I don't know. And she gave me some legal analysis. So does that mean we can, so we should be able to just have them emailed to us? And if the person withdraws the request, we can still see the request.
Point of clarification, I didn't say no, I just said, here's what it was, and then the quasi judicial. So it wasn't a no, it was how do we manage?
Yeah, but I
this?
didn't see the core request. That was, you did not give me the request. I still don't know who requested or what they asked for specifically. You said it had something to do with some water spa or parking or something. But yeah, so I want to see the request. And I'd like that to be emailed to us, within a reasonable time after it comes in, like how it usually is. Even if the request is withdrawn, I think we should still get to see it. And so that's my issue. And it sounds like, Jeff, since you said there are some rare situations where we shouldn't see the core request, and I would imagine maybe that involves an employee situation, but since Denise always thinks that, anything can be quasi judicial, we need some clarification so she doesn't have to call you every single time there's a core request.
Yeah, so the general rule for quasi judicial matters, and as you know, is that you're supposed to be getting all your information in the public hearing as a deciding planning commission or the city council or historic preservation commission shouldn't be getting information from the outside about a quasi judicial matter that they're going to be considering. So I guess the question is, how do you decide when something's a quasi judicial matter, when a core request relates to a quasi judicial matter? And there's no perfect bright line rule. If there's an application filed, for example, about for development or something, then probably better to keep the Cora information or emails, whatever is involved, just away from the deciding people, like the people in the planning commission, HPC, and city council. It would be better to do that because some council members will have core information. They're looking at emails. They may not be actually admitted in the public hearing. So I think that is a better approach.
But they could be, right?
There could be, yeah, right. And
So all we have to do is we have to say, gee, city attorney, for the next upcoming quasi judicial hearing, we'd really like to see all the emails between and anything that was produced as a result of any core request on this issue. And then you'd be like, cool, I can put that into evidence.
Yeah, that would basically be just part of the record then.
Yeah.
Right.
So if we got the core request in advance, it was no problem as long as you follow it up by making it part of the record? Or is that splitting hairs?
Yeah, I mean, I guess ultimately the rule is I would recommend that you wait to get that as part of the packet that's delivered to you, as part of the overall packet then.
Okay, so in the case at hand, there's something about, what was it, 404 Manitou Ave, then it might turn into something.
Yeah, so I think that goes to the next issue. What's going to be quasi judicial?
Yeah, like, are we supposed to be psychic and anticipate if any of these issues are going to come before us or not? And since there's a remote possibility, then we can't see the core request, or where do you draw the line?
Yeah, I mean, there's no right line. I think if there's, my line would be, there's an application submitted, that's an easy one. It's going to be coming in, they've been meeting with the planning department, it's coming. That's probably another easy one. Other than that, I think you're probably okay, ultimately. And then if it does come to a quasi judicial hearing, you'll just have to basically disclose the information as part of the record.
Right.
So that's probably
Mayor?
the best approach.
Mayor,
We-
it sounds like this is going to require some conversation. And I'm just wondering if we need to put this on a future agenda for that
I'm
conversation.
wondering, I was just thinking about
Since we're
that too.
gonna
This
put
is
your,
not really an agenda
get
item.
you guys for it.
Going a little longer than we normally do, so that it's probably gravitating that way. I know, Mr. Shady, you asked to speak, so you're
I'm sorry,
okay.
He answered my question.
Okay.
There's a-
So
Yes, you-
before we
question.
move on, then I just need to know, am I going to be provided with the 404 Manitou Ave thing or no? Is there a pending application?
So
I don't,
to keep this as brief as possible, since we don't have this agendized, so I'm a little hesitant here. we haven't been sending every Cora request out. We did back when we had some issues that were a little bit more high profile, more council involved type issues. And most of what we get are pretty just standard. They're not anything I would think that the council would be interested in. You know, maybe some requests for like code violation information, building permit information, you know, things from our code. You know, we had some election things back when we had the initiative that people wanted to see some of those, maybe some contracts, things like that. So you get people that just sort of want basic information. The ones that are more media based, you know, like the journalists, when they start requesting things, those definitely become to me like more of a political thing. So that's where my understanding was that council wanted to see some of those. So we haven't had any of those types of core requests lately, thankfully. So I'm kind of confused because I know it's probably been close to a year since we've sent out core requests. And so I guess I'm confused that we were still under directive to do that.
Yeah, I guess the excitement kind of waned, and so we sort of, lost track of that practice. I think I struggle like the rest of you. There are times when a lot of the stuff is pretty mundane. It's, as Judy said, this may be a real estate transaction. They just really need to get some things clarified. And other times you begin to worry there's a political nuance to it. I don't think, it seems to me like it's very difficult to say that there's a real hard and fast rule. It's in a practical matter. So what's the best way to do it? Do we want to hear everything? And having looked at some of the core requests that have come through, you look at him, it seems to be pretty mundane. So it's, in my mind, I don't get real excited about this sometimes. If council wants to discuss this further, we probably should make this an agenda item and then discuss it. Nancy, do you have a suggestion?
Just if perhaps Julie would like to come up with a written proposal that we could act on with all the criteria for the.
Yeah, my
different-
written proposal would be what I thought we were operating on is that every time there's a Cora request, it gets emailed to us.
Well, no, just if it's going to
If we think it's boring, we don't have to read it. If we think it's interesting, we can read it. I didn't realize that we were having Judy decide which ones I might be interested in or which ones are political. So yeah, I'd be happy to write something up. It would say the motion would simply say that we get copied on the requests and then we get copied on the responses to the requests.
And I would suggest that maybe a bit more, because I think that there are some quasi judicial issues and also it takes a lot of staff time. Are you just asking?
It doesn't take a lot of staff time
Right.
to upload. If I'm uploading
Can
something,
I ask
I'll-
something?
Nancy, go
Is,
for it.
are you looking just for the request or for the response to the request?
both.
Okay, I think that potentially is going to take a lot of time.
But
So,
you think potentially that takes a lot of time? I disagree. Thank you.
And John, and then
Yeah, I guess my comment would be that the core request is already filled. And it seems like most of these requests, does the city attorney review the core requests?
Not all of them, it just depends.
Okay, so it would seem like to me that if there is an application or a matter that is filed before the city, that's what I heard you say, right? Okay, that could be coming before the planning department or whatever, right? That then might roll up to us hearing the case. That would be quasi judicial, right?
Right.
Okay. Any other kind of thing in which there is no application, okay, or anything like that, that is 100% public information. Is that not correct? Including to council?
Most of them, yeah.
Most of it. Can you give me an example of what's?
Well, there could be like a request for some medical records by an employee for their own records or by an attorney for an employee or something. There's certain, I'm trying to think what else there could be. There'd be a few just exceptions to the general core requests. Sometimes they'd be ex-employees. Sometimes
So-
there's,
so-
there's, Cora has a provision for certain people getting certain records and other people can't.
Right.
So those are the ones where it could be an issue. I was just trying to
Right.
be complete with my answer
Right.
to you.
So in the case of where the director of personnel is releasing some employee records that are protected under Colorado law, right?
Right,
That's a request for your own records. The fact that they possibly came in through the Cora channel, right?
right,
Okay, they're really not a public
Right.
Cora request, right?
right.
That's really an employee asking for a copy of their file or something like that. And then I believe under the Cora law, under the public records law, certain information is protected, right?
Right.
You know, in other words, that the city wouldn't be releasing your social security number or your height or your weight or whatever, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Council, I think,
Then do you want me to follow through with Nancy's suggestion, or should the city attorney, if this is going to be like an ordinance, I
Right.
mean, I just was hoping we could have an agreement. But if we're going to turn it into an ordinance, I think it would be better if Jeff writes it than if I write it. But, you know, if I write it, it'll just say we get everything unless there's a pending application or request for employee records or other protected and for confidential information under Colorado law. But are we going to turn this into an ordinance?
No,
My
nobody's-
suggestion was not for an ordinance, it was for a process.
Just for process.
just a policy item.
Yeah.
I would think that our existing ordinances should.
Okay, well, until
satisfy
such
things.
time that this gets put on the agenda, do I have to make a Cora request every week to ask for the Cora requests that have been made? Maybe we should have a stipend for city council to spend so that we have money to pay for the Cora requests that we have to pay for to ask, since we can't just get it, you know, easily. But until then, I want to know what's going on. I really do.
Okay, thank you. And Denise, you had a quick comment, I think.
No, I just think that the conversation is great. A couple of things is if we do this, and this is what council wants, I think there's a couple of things for transparency on the top of every core request. We should say city council will be copied on everything. For full transparency, we could just include all core requests in the council packets because anybody can get them. That would be, however, because there are some, I've reached out to some city managers and I said, how do you manage this? No city manager that I've talked to at this point has said that council has ever asked for the core request. That doesn't mean that you can't ask. I'm just saying this is some information I found. But, you know, if let's say you guys get a core request and then do you send it to other people who would have to pay for it? What does that look like? I mean, there's a lot of things that I think need to be discussed as we work through this. So maybe it needs to be agenized, if I can say that word, if everybody agrees. I'm just bringing up some other things that I've reached out to other city managers and asked about. So
Okay,
those
thank
are
you.
things I'm
And-
just bringing up.
And I guess my personal thought is that maybe we should discuss this as an agendaized item here in the future. But let me go around the table here real quick. Judith, you want to discuss an agenda item? Nancy?
I don't really need to see Cora requests.
Okay,
Thanks.
okay. You'd like it? Okay. Nancy, okay. All right, it's like we can make this agenda item. So Julie, perhaps you could write the memo and articulate what you'd like to see. And
When can we
the
put this on the agenda, Mayor?
the 21st is pretty, we'd hope to get it to a couple other things tonight, to like the match proposal and there was in the library, those got pushed back. So I think we'd be looking at in April. So that I know the March 21st meeting is pretty busy. April 4th. Okay, so that would be roughly 4 weeks from tonight. If that sounds agreeable. And then, yeah, Julie, if you could put down, articulate what the problem we're trying to solve and what we'd like to
Yeah.
see. And then there's, and something that you might have to reach out to staff is how much work is involved, because things like this can,
Well, when you
get
think
pretty
about it,
involved.
Mayor, when Judy gets her Cora requests, assuming she fills it, which I assume most of them are filled, then she has to scan the documents, which is probably time consuming, and send it to the person who requested So when she does that, if she forwards it to city council, that might take 3 seconds. Forward to city council, you type CITY and the rest of it populates and you click send. So I would submit it's probably not that onerous, but we can talk about that when
Oh, okay, that would
on
be,
April 4th
okay.
or whatever.
yeah, you have the advantage of me in that you're an attorney and,
It's just
I'm
forwarding
thinking-
an email, John.
Well,
I mean, you know how to do that.
But if things have to be redacted and stuff, then we start getting into.
It's already redacted for the person receiving the information. We're just being copied on something that's already being done.
Okay. So if you'll get the memo right for August or
Okay.
April the 4th.
April 4th.
Okay, April 4th.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, so we're still on council correspondence. Anybody got anything else? Judith?
This is not about Cora requests. I have a question about the Citizens Academy. I'm really excited to see so many people sign up in a waiting list. On the city website, on the flyer, it indicates that there are going to be a number of presenters, including elected officials. So my question is, will those sessions be listed as public meetings in case one or more council members wants to sit in?
No, they're not public meetings because they're not elected officials at this point. It's not for elected officials. So it is not public meeting. The elected official is the mayor. He'll be there the first night. He'll be welcoming them. We'll have Jeff Parker there also. So it will be each department head will be presenting, we'll be doing site visits, et cetera. We can definitely share the PowerPoints once they get completed. We're not complete with all the PowerPoints, and some of them, the PowerPoints aren't going to be done until even the week before because this is a pretty onerous project. So no, we do not have it posted. And I don't think that's the purpose of it. It's the purpose is this group of 20, and that's all we're allowing because they're going to be doing projects, they're going to be doing those type of things. And it's really for them to have conversation and not to make it a public meeting where 50 people or 30 people or 25 people show up. That's why we have a wait list at this time.
I guess my take on that would be that it's public business and it should really be a public meeting. It's in general, I think things that are done in the public interest should be public. If we're talking about spending public money, that's public business. I realize there are exceptions and we have to be careful about that. But in general, I think the philosophy is that open government is better than not. And Mr. Shada and then Julie.
This is for the city attorney. I think this, and it's just something that I think that I was reading through the Sunshine Act. Okay. And there's a specific clause for state entities and then local entities, correct?
Yep.
And it just appears like to me that we probably ought to clean up our act a little bit from the standpoint of how we're posting some of these things. Okay. We're oftentimes having meetings, like for instance, there was the Ruxton Corridor meeting. Okay. There were certainly 3 council members or more at that meeting. Okay. So I believe that when we have those kind of gatherings, and just tell me if I'm wrong, I mean, that we ought to be posting those as essentially a public meeting that essentially council, okay, planning commissioners, I think were there. Okay. All right. There were other commission members that were there. Okay. I didn't go through and count these things, but it just seems like to me in general, and maybe this is dovetailing on what the mayor was talking about, that when we have these kind of events, it seems like to me that the Sunshine Law says that we must have a posting if public business is discussed. It doesn't necessarily mean that council members are standing up and doing anything if we're just there, right?
Yeah, that's generally correct.
Okay. So it just seems like to me that we ought to be thinking about how to kind of clean this up so that we are posting these things properly. Okay. It seems like to me, we had some discussions and I just want to change this a little bit to some comments that happened about 3 years ago, and I think the mayor brought it up about kind of Hiawatha Gardens and some of these task force meetings. And I would also like council to have a discussion about that. I think we ought to be erring on the side of having public meetings posted. We should not be having task force, in my opinion, that are meeting, so to speak, in secret. Okay. Especially when there are staff members on the clock using staff time, using staff resources, et cetera. Okay. And it seems like to me, we ought to have a good, healthy discussion about just those kind of meetings in the Sunshine Act, so that, number one, I don't want to get hauled into court, okay, for violation because I came to a meeting and unbeknownst to me, there were 2 other council people there. And then the moment we all 3 stay, technically, I believe we're all in violation, right? And somebody could make a complaint.
Yeah, I mean, I'd argue that if you didn't get there to discuss anything, you sat in the back room, you weren't discussing it, but I think you made a good point that it's when public business is discussed and 3 or more members are present, it's a meeting. So, I mean, I would try and argue against that being an actual intentional violation, but I think it's a better policy.
Well,
When there's 3 or more members, it could be posted.
I got a call from somebody in town and they wanted to have a meeting about city business, and they wanted to include or not include certain city officials and whatnot. And so this is what precipitated me to go read that law. And then I started to kind of get concerned when I was thinking about just generally how we're doing business. Okay. And my comment to them was, you know, the moment you're going to invite 3 or more, okay, my reading of the law is it must be a public meeting and you cannot exclude anybody. Is that true?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
I think, yeah,
can I speak up on this?
certainly,
So
please.
I do appreciate you bringing this up. I'm not aware of those meetings. Because if nobody communicates with me, I have no way of knowing. So especially if it's a community meeting, that's just somebody who's not an official that's attending. So generally what I've recommended, and I've heard recommended in the past, if you show up to one of those meetings, just, you know, oh, hey, I heard about it, I want to come to it. And you see there's 2 other people there. What I've seen done in the past, which resolved it, is one of those people says, you know what, I'll leave the meeting because it hasn't been posted. We haven't created this as a public meeting. I understand what you're saying is to make those a public meeting. But if that situation comes up and there's, you show up or you're there with one other council member and you're sitting on opposite sides of the room, if that 3rd person shows up, one of the 3 of you should leave that meeting because it's not posted as a public meeting and now you violated.
And I
that.
understand that discretion. My comment to this constituent was, if that's your intent is to invite 3 council members, okay,
That's a
all right,
problem.
then to me, I think we need to have a process in which, because my reading of the law is we have to post it, and Jeff can correct me, in the normal places that we post things for the city. In other words, we have to do it. It has to be a city posting. In other words, it isn't up to this person to put a posting on the telephone pole across the street.
Absolutely.
All right. So I understand what you're talking about discretion, but this was an intentional thing that they wanted to invite 3 people. And this is what I said. If you're doing 3 or more, the way I'm reading the law, and I said, I will ask the city attorney the next time we're in session. I said, then I think we have to give notice. And then you cannot, they also wanted it to be a closed meeting. And I said, the way I read the law, you cannot have it be a closed meeting. It has to be a posted public meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so the idea there too is as maybe as an advocate for this sunshine law, to share that with them, that if that happens again and somebody says, hey, I want to have this meeting, I want to invite 3 of you. You let them know, you know, you can invite 2, but once you hit the 3, then we have to go through the city clerk and this has to be done as a public meeting.
And that was my point to them is that I said, because the tricky thing was they wanted it to be a closed meeting
Mhm.
with 3 public officials there. And I said, you can't have your cake and eat it too like that.
Right.
If you've got 3, it has to be a public meeting and it has to be posted through our process of posting the meeting, saying that public business is going to be discussed there, even though nobody stands up and says anything on behalf of the city. If you're present, is that not correct?
Correct.
That has to be posted.
Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Julie.
I'm wondering if we could have this be an agenda item to come up soon, because an agenda item that I would like to propose that's related to this is, I think that when we have these community groups that are specifically designed to advise us, make recommendations to us, sometimes they even work with staff and spend money, like the Hiawatha Gardens Task Force. All of a sudden, they're going out and they're paying a contractor, someone to draw up, some designs for us and this kind of thing. I think whether it's Parab or whoever it is, I think we should have it be a public meeting that gets posted. And I think there should be also posted minutes on the website, just like we have for city council, HPC and planning. Because, these are public meetings, important things are being done, important decisions are being made. Staff is all often there saying, oh, I can spend up to 50K without council permission. Do you want us to hire a consultant or a whole bunch of consultants or whatever? So I would like all of that to be any kind of city approved task force or commission to be required to go through Judy and to have a posting of their meetings and to have their minutes available to the public online. Whereas this isn't really on the agenda when I'm asking for, I just wanted to try to describe an agenda item I'd like to see us be able to discuss. If there's time on April 4th, that would be great. But if there's consensus, I'd like to see us talk about whether that should be our new requirement. And I'd also like to get feedback on whether the city attorney thinks that would protect us better than what we're doing now.
Okay, well, okay, my take on that would be, I think it would be a good agenda item for us to discuss. Yeah, I don't want to belabor it too much tonight, because I do see that happening in the future. And it seems reasonable in the context of tonight's discussion that we give Mr. Parker a chance to weigh in. And Jeff, I know this is kind of.
Yeah, so I mean, no, it's a pretty easy answer. And I mean, basically any sort of formally constituted board or commission by the town, like the town is, or the city is established, they fall under the definition of a local public body. And so they're generally required to comply with the open meetings law. I guess, there may be some maybe informal working groups that are citizen committees that the city council hasn't actually approved or formally established. They probably don't, but anything that's been formally established, endorsed by the city, they do have to comply.
Then we're out of compliance. Okay, so we're
we-
definitely out of compliance.
Okay,
So my instinct was right. So it sounds like since we're disobeying the law now, every week, I would like this on the agenda soon so we can clean it up.
Okay, so next week, one of the things we have on the work session agenda next week, Nancy's going to talk about boards and commissions. And I think probably in the context of that, we may have some enlightenment. So, okay, I can see that coming up sooner rather.
I mean,
than
we don't really need to talk about much of anything anymore. The city attorney has already told us what we're supposed to be doing. I suggest we just start doing it. We don't have to wait for it to come up on a work session.
Okay, I mean, that,
We just have to notify all our boards and commissions that from now on, before they have any meetings, they need to run it by Judy and be told how far in advance she needs the notice so she can have it properly posted.
okay, Natalie?
I would like to discuss this a little further because I think there is some ambiguity between a task force and a neighborhood group, and when does a neighborhood group become a task force, and at what point does the council acknowledge them and their work and those kind of gray areas?
Yeah, no, and that's true. I mean, the task force like Hiawatha Gardens, originally, I don't think it was ever chartered by the city. I mean, maybe when Task Force 3 came along and there was a resolution that kind of gave it renewed life. The Library Task Force was a grassroots citizens thing. The Climate Action Work Group, I think it also just kind of spontaneously came to life. To me, it's legally different than like the planning and the HPC, those two commissions. And then the advisory boards, and those are defined in our code as to how they will function. These other things are, for better or worse, there's sort of a renegade quality to that.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
Mr.
come up in the past, I know, I mean, maybe years and years ago where there was sort of this confusion about, well, I don't recall which one it was, but it was for the city. And was this, do they have to comply with open meetings law? And who are they? And how are they comprised? And were they appointed by the city? And I think there's some, like you were saying, there's some citizen groups that maybe start as citizen groups and then they kind of come into the city and then the city council begins to have meetings with them, but they haven't been formally constituted. So I think it's a good point. I think it's important to be clear which are actual city endorsed, city formed, whatever you want to call them, boards, committees, commission, task force, and which ones are you just actually listening to and people can come talk to you. Like, the Chamber of Commerce can come talk to you. They're not a city committee, but you should be clear as to which one's which. And then there's no, because that actually has other issues for you, like liability issues. And, if something happens in one of their meetings, is this a city task force now that should be covered by city insurance? So you need to be clear as to, is this a city endorsed, city formed task force? Or is this just a citizen group that the city is happy to have doing some work and they have a staff member showing up to once in a while to help out? So I think it's important that we do clarify the actual status of these different groups. Because right now, I don't know all your task force, who's doing what, but you're right. Your code lists your specific committees and commissions. It's very clear in your code which ones are there. If there's something else that's been formed, I'd say that you want to make a city task force or whatever you want to call it, you're going to want to have a document that's documenting what that is and how that operates and all that.
So as an example, the Hiawatha Gardens Task Force, that task force, I've been reading through their minutes. They're clearly giving direction to staff. We are spending public dollars. Okay. As a result of it, we are hiring consultants. Reports are being delivered to this body. Those reports are not posted. So we're putting the public in a situation where they have to core out all this stuff if they want to see what this group is doing. And I think that is an unfair burden to place on the public, especially when we have ongoing staff relationships, okay, that are going on with it. We are spending money. We have budgeted money for that task force. To me, that is clearly an official kind of a thing that's going on. Don't you agree?
I don't want to say yes or no based on what you just told me. I want to think about it more because I don't want to just commit the city to.
Well, I guess
it does sound like it's an issue we should be concerned about.
Yeah, I think we ought to discuss it because I just think there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that's very difficult for people in our community to know what's going on. Thank you.
Yeah, I would also favor discussing. I think it's probably not a one night kind of discussion either. It may be something we'll want to mull over a couple of times. But I think maybe I think the timing actually works out reasonably well because we're going to be entertaining, boards and commissions. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, my briefing,
Nancy.
I've submitted it and I do not have anything on task forces in it.
I can't hear
Okay.
that.
Yeah, could you speak a little closer to the mic there?
I've already submitted my briefing for next week and it has nothing on task forces in it.
Oh,
just
that's
on-
fine. May I just ask you something before we move to a different topic?
Go ahead, Julie.
I think Jeff just made it pretty clear that when there's a task force or a commission or any kind of body that is specifically identified in our law, the Housing Authority Board, HARB, OSAC, all these places that are mentioned in our law are official bodies. People have to be approved and come in here before we allow them to join that group. All of those groups, as I understand it from Jeff, what he was just saying, those groups cannot have meetings unless they go through Judy and they publicly announce in advance where the meeting is. The meeting should be in City Hall. They shouldn't be in somebody's backyard or somebody's living room. They should be here so the public can come and they know when it's going to be and what time. And it's already the law now. So that part of it, we can deal with the Hiawatha and all these quasi task force things. But clearly, if it's in our code, we should be following our law now. So I think someone needs to notify those groups that they need to stop meeting until they get with Judy and do some notices.
Well, Mayor, and I think there's some confusion with this because we do have those listed boards, commissions, and committees that are in our city code, they do go through the process. They do post their agendas, they post their packets, they go with their set either Zoom or here in person. So they are official city bodies, public bodies. So I think the question for me is like the Hiawatha Gardens Task Force or the library.
The Climate Action Work Group.
And so,
Okay, and we're not
you
going to
know,
solve
are
that.
those city,
Yeah.
does that
We're-
fall under the same
yeah,
category?
We're not going to solve that tonight, so I think we'll get on agenda. It looks to me, and just looking at what we've got here, April 4th, we could probably entertain it. So let's tentatively try and discuss this April 4th. In the meantime, Nancy, next week, she'll tell us a little bit about boards and commissions and that may lend itself to the discussion overall. So I'm going to end discussion on this topic. And Mr. Park, I'll give you a last chance if you'd like to, if there's anything we need to take home and to heart here in the next 30 seconds. If not, we'll look for wisdom in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think that ultimately you just need to make sure you're clear as to which task force or city's task force and which ones aren't.
Okay, I think we understand that we have more of a problem than we thought we had, but we'll work at fixing it. Okay, Natalie, is this?
Unrelated.
It's unrelated. Okay, yeah, let's move along. Good.
I received an email today. I just want to thank staff for working with some of the neighborhood families that wanted to get the Bud Ford Pavilion open again. I guess that is open and they're just really excited about how that process kind of came together. So just a
Great.
little shout out. The Bud Ford Pavilion, that was closed during the day for a period of time and some families wanted access. Yep, and they worked together with staff and everything's come together for them, so.
Anything else? Let's see. Okay, well, let's go on to the city administrator's report.
Just a couple of dates. Remember, the Manny Awards is coming up, so it will be right here. I don't think we have to post that one because we're not doing public business, but it's to celebrate. So that's the Manny Awards on the 23rd. Free grocery distribution is on the 21st. So I just want to, and then it was also today, but I want to remind the public about those two things. And then there was a statement that I always call the attorney if there's a quasi judicial issue, and that is not the case. Most of it we can manage in-house, but there are times when I call the attorney for direction whenever there is a question about it, but it's not on an always basis. And I wanted to correct that statement. Thank you.
Okay, all right. If there's nothing else, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
When we adjourn.
Motion is second. All in favor? Let's vote. Sorry, any discussion? We'll go around the table here. Okay, well, let's vote.
6-0 in favor.
Apparently there was no discussion.
I'm sorry, I guess
need.
Counselor Wolf, didn't you vote already? I'm right, because I've already hit the button. Okay.
Okay, all right.